Right, good morning to those that are joining us already.
Africa Live on Abaz FM 107.2.
Good morning, John Yakubu, Lydia Martini Coulter, Javed Sata, Abdel Ninj Abdelau. Good morning to you, and thanks for joining us this morning. Right, as you can see here, we're using the second studio. The first studio, which you normally see every Saturday, is currently down. So we are right in the second studio. Right, welcome to another beautiful time right here on Hours 107.2. Africa Live is the program, as you know. Where are we? Okay, time at 17 minutes past 10. We'll be right here till 11 o'clock when the next team will take over. But starting from next Saturday, that is the month of October, we will be having our usual Black History Month. Those that are on our Facebook page, on the live program, I showed them a copy of the program of events that has been prepared for the Black History Month by CREA, Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights, and we'll be talking much about them today. Unfortunately, I've not been able to track a representative down from CREA to be available today. They've always been happy to come around to talk about what CREA is doing. And they are doing a lot. For people that don't know them, they are actually doing a terrific job around here, mostly in advance of equality, and also courses which are directed at reducing discrimination. But we'll be going through some of the programs that they have. But before then, we'll also be looking at the welcome address. When I got a copy of the brochure, that's that one. The welcome address is very packed. I liked it. When I read it, I liked it. So by the time I read it to us, I mean, you will be able to also make up your mind, because CREA is actually pushing for history of Africa, which they believe that Black History Month is not just the history of Africa, it's also a Scottish history. And this history should be taught in schools, that it should actually get into mainstream school curriculum, so that it's taught right in the school, and Black history is not just limited to just 1 month in a whole year. I mean, if Black history is Scotland history as well, some of us will, okay, I know, so I was just going to try to pick everybody together, but then some of you do not know that blacks did lived here in Scotland in the past, and we have the Moors who were black, and there was even a black king of Scotland. So I mean, if we get those resources in the course of this Black History Month, we'll also be rolling them out for us, because it's very, very important for us to know about our history. Is very, very important. As much, I know that the host community is trying to bring our story alive, but there's a particular problem that we've been encountering, in the sense that when they tell our histories, they tell those histories from their own angle, from their own views, and there's no way that could be right. But when we tell those history ourselves, then we'll be able to say it, or tell it from our own angle. I'll give us a quick example before I bring another song for us today. A perspective for us to know, a very simple example. And I think I've mentioned this before. I was discussing with someone yesterday as well about this, and you know, I had to bring up the example again for the person to actually understand the direction some of us are coming from, especially when we are talking about cultural relativism, and that is looking at people's culture and people's history from the views of those people, not from your own views. And a quick example, when I mean, let's say I'm over 50 years now, right? As at the time when I was in the primary school and we were taught history, even right back in Nigeria, what I was taught in history was that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. Now, that can't be right for somebody in the host community here. What I mean is that maybe like a Scottish person, a Caucasian, Scottish or British person, if they say Mungo Park discovered River Niger, that's fine for that person, because for that person, it was Mungo Park who went, discovered it, and brought the news back to them. But for someone like myself, as an African, whose great-grandfathers and grandmothers were actually living in that area, they were already there, they were the one who helped Mungo Park to navigate the river I mean, that history can't be right. You won't tell an African child that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. That's is not right, because his or our great grandfathers were already there. They were already resident there. So that's just a simple example of history. You know, when history is told or is taught from the perspective of people that are not actually the owners of that history. So so these are the things, and those are some of the things also that we are discussing with organizations that are led by Africans. That is good. The host community, I know they have even we might complain about some few things, the way they do some things, but let's take it that they've got a good mind to know about the histories of Africa, to talk to the African children that are growing here, to talk to them about Africa, about Nigeria, about South Africa, about Tanzania, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, Congo, and on like that. But the narratives they are taking out are not well, we can say it's not totally correct, and that brings that responsibility on those of us that are here, that are fully involved in communities work, or people that are constantly in contact, or that are having interaction with people within maybe the political arena, or policymakers, in order to set these things straight. I'll quickly take some comment because I'm having it here. Thanks for joining us. Adebowale Timi Dayo Kendi, thanks for joining us. Oliroti, good morning to you, and thanks for joining us. Dayo Pelumi, thank you very much for joining us. I've got Akindele Adewale Saburi right on there. Lion Lawal Abiodun Oladile, thanks for joining us this morning. Mayor Joe Bangboshe Olujoke Yerokun, thanks for joining us, man. And that's Tosin Idowu, thank you very much. We've got Yeti Aya Ade Olasokami, thanks for joining. Akiloye Babatunde, thanks for joining us, and the host of other that I've mentioned before. And of course, a whole lot of you that are right there on our frequency in your offices, in your or at your homes doing your Saturday chores and all that. Thank you very much for tuning in to us, not just on Africa Live, but of course to Awaz FM 107.2. Okay, let's take a few comments coming right on here. Mungo Park didn't discover River Niger. River Niger always existed. It was discovery for him as a tourist. That's it. So he was an explorer. To put it in proper perspective, he was an explorer, and you know, he was traveling about, and he came to that place. So in fact, that he discovered River Niger is also, like Oliroti is saying here, that is even challengeable. But then the position is that people were there before, and people assisted him. The tribe that were there obviously assisted him, and I think it was in his journal as well. It was in his record that he met people there and they assisted him to navigate that river. So it wouldn't be right for an African child to ask an African child who discovered River Niger, and an African child would say, "Oh, is Mungo Park," and you will mark that answer. You will mark it correct. No, but unfortunately, like I said, that was what we went through. Maybe we're talking about 40 years ago. Even in Nigeria, that was what we were taught. Mungo Park discovered River Niger, and then we'll write it, yes, we'll discover River Niger, yes, it's Mungo Park. And then the teacher will mark it for us. Yes, you got it correct, because that was what they taught us. But I mean, growing now, also having that intelligent mind to start looking at things that, why would it be that it's Mungo Park who discovered River Niger when my grandparents were there and they even assisted him? So, and that's just the simple thing about this. So that's a charge going out to organizations that are African-led or that are interacting with policymakers to put our history in proper perspective. We can't leave it all to them. If we are not coming forward to say, definitely they might not get in it. Remember, at 5:30, we will be going for a short heartbreak. It's a community radio station. It's a non-for-profit, so it's some of these adverts that we use to get some bit of funding to continue bringing you this program, not just this one, which is always on Saturday, but all our programs. So, and if you are a business owner out there, or you have community events and co, of course you could run your advert with us. Number to call at any time is 0141-4201-072. Somebody will be able to get across to you and get things sorted. We've got just about a few seconds to heartbreak. I'll be coming around to continue with reading the comments that have been left here by participants. Yeah, so please do stay on with us. I'm getting a signal. Like I said, our second studio is shut down at the moment, so please do bear with us. This place is not as spacious as the other side, but I can guarantee you that by next week we will be back on to our big well lighted studio. But for now, we are going for a heartbreak. Do stay on with us.
Want even more Awas FM? Connect with them now on Facebook at Awas FM Glasgow.
Awas FM, broadcasting on 107.2 and online straight from your smartphone.
Linville Thompson, straight from Kingston, Jamaica. So bless up.
Africa Live on Abaz FM 107.2.
Good morning, Glasgow. It's your boy Cool Z.
What's that? It's your boy Triple.
It is Awas FM Africa Live 107.2. You're tuned in right now.
Yeah! You know, I think I should just start calling them songs and start calling them experiences, because that's what I do.
Right, thanks Prince Samuel Onwobodo. Thanks for joining in. Marjorie Ondi, thank you, and thank you for joining in. Greg Dexter, thanks for joining us this morning. Let's see.
Yeah!
Good morning. Right, welcome back. Let's quickly take that because of our time. I want to quickly pick up where we stopped before this short hard break. Let's take it. There have been comments about African history and being told from the perspective that is not ours. I'll quickly take, we've spoken about, okay, I've read that obviously River Niger has been there. Grandparents for Africans have been there, have been resident there for years, maybe for centuries, even before Mungo Park got there. So it won't be right to say or to expect an African child to answer the question that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. That's clearly wrong. Now I've got other comments here. Let's take it from Oliroti again. Africa needs to start directing their own narratives, because Africa history circulated is a narrative from Western tourist visits to Africa. Yeah, that's really that's very correct. For instance, Black History Month is an insult on black race. I mean, that's one of the things that we will be dealing with during the course of this Black History Month. And remember, I mentioned that the host community, it could be that, okay, we have a Black community, we want to celebrate them, we want to talk about their history, we want to do this, we want to do that. I mean, which is fine, but to actually the narrative itself, I think that is where the problem is coming in from. The Black History Month, some people have challenged that why should it be limited to 1 month? Some people have challenged that why should it be Black history? So there are quite lots of many things, lots of things. And I think in the last year's version, we actually roll out how Black History Month, how it started. I mean, from America, what it was called before, which was just to celebrate or something during the pushing of a movement or a cause. And event has gone past that. So people are like, okay, when you talk about Black History Month today, what exact history are you talking about? You have some people that will say, okay, it's Africa, it should only be Africa. You have some people that will say, no, they are just trying to mix things up. So quite many things, but then we'll trash it one after the other. So I do get that. I remember the narrative of South African experience of apartheid from Western India, and the views is a complete contrast to what I saw and watched when I lived in Nigeria. And I'm hoping also that when we bring these topics up, that we'll also have people who have either the experience or the views that they had, or the narratives they have from their own position is different, so that we can juggle this together and sort of pass out a sort of an informed position to people from the host community that might be watching our program. Let's quickly keep going on, and we have even the whole narrative of names of African countries isn't right, because Africa existed and thrived long before slave trade, missionary invasion, and colonialism. It's clearly put, and I think people put it that African history is not the history of slavery. And I think that's one area where CREA, Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights, where they are actually pushing things forward, that African history is not just slavery. It would be that slavery interrupted African history. The Africans has been there, they've got great empires and could before the advent of history. So the history of Africa should not be limited to the time of slavery. That's actually the same message that we are sending out to our own people as well. That is people from Africa, especially those that are in position of authority here, whether as community leaders or church faith leaders, or even some that have had their own position within the political sphere of this country. There are I know there are times people want to talk about issue of discrimination, push things back to when slavery started and the part that was played by one community or the other, but there should be this aspect that African had its history. The Black civilization, you talk about mathematics, you talk about astrology, I mean, many spheres of life. And interestingly, even blacks in Western nations are even showing those expertise and intelligence today, even in this century. So it's really about letting our children know that African has a history that is before slavery and even after slavery. And that's one of the positions we'll be taking on this program for the Black History Month. It's 2 hours every Saturday for the next 1 month, all throughout October. So this program, instead of being 1 hour, is going to be 2 hours, and we'll be looking at African history. One of the areas that I'm very passionate about when it comes to Africa history, one of the areas is the history of our women. Our gallant women, are women of virtue, because what has happened so far is that aspect of the history of our women has been, suppressed down. So, and because it was suppressed down, it was quite very, very easy for some of our women today and girls to be used to push a sort of a narrative that no, African women has never been allowed to talk. They've never been allowed to get involved. So I know BBC has tried to run a program, a sort of a series of program on this in the past to bring out African women, and I'm not talking about the recent centuries, maybe in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and co. Those that maybe went for Western education and then came back to run things with their people. No, and we are talking about those that existed during the empires to actually show the power of the African woman. Between the African woman and the African men in those days, their roles were complementary. We had women leaders. We've had empires that were led by women. We have the ones that were led by men. There was no within Africa in those centuries, there were no issue of okay, you can't lead because you're a woman. No, they have that thing where they know that, okay, this is the person that will lead us. This is the person that whichever way that they have their system, then that's the next person that's meant to be online. So we need to bring out these very powerful stories. And I see when they released the what was this film again? And I just forgot. That was released recently, and it was giving like black girls and guys, were giving them like a boost that yes, blacks are powerful. So when we bring all those stories as well, our girls, they will be able to see themselves from the angle of respect and the angle of strength rather than weakness. So we'll be dealing with that. Let's quickly take more. Okay, and this all the Rotty obviously agreeing that Black history should be taught holistically and selectively. It can't be generalized. I was listening to there was I think it was I've forgotten the program. I was listening to it yesterday, and which has to do with Ari's visit to Africa, and there are some couple of people were interviewed, and they have their own views. They believe that even Harry and Meghan, there's an empire they represented, and they need to sort that part out first before any other celebration and co. So, and I was looking at, is Pan-Africanism rising in Africa? But we'll be looking into that. So I quite agree with you that Black history should be taught holistically and selectively. And like Kriya said, Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights, that Black history should actually be taught in schools as part of history and not just limited to either the 1 month talk or just this sort of once in a year contact with schools about Africa, because you find out that when most of the schools, when they talk to them about African history or a particular African country, what they talk about in the schools is about what is wrong with that community, why that community has to be assisted, why they have to raise money for that community. So the perception that the kids have about Africa is the one of hopelessness, is the one of poverty, but then they don't have that. Unlike here, you know, for instance, I think about a year ago, when we were discussing about politics in Britain generally, we were talking about the number of people that have gone into destitution. We're talking about the number of people that were using food banks. But then that on its own does not or did not affect the total history of Britain as a nation, as a strong nation of four nations, and the fact that you have more people using food banks, more people either going into debt or going into destitution, that was not put as the main theme of Britain's qualities as a world leader. So when it comes to that of Africa, it shouldn't, I mean, the narrative shouldn't be just that, oh, this village, they don't have water, they don't have this thing, we need to get money for them, we need to make cake and sell cake in the schools and get money and then go and give it to them. It has to be taught holistically, like Oliroti mentioned there. It has to be taught holistically. Yes, this is their story, and it would be that every society, every community have their challenges. So, but that should not take away the strength, the grace and the glory of that community. So we'll be looking further into that. The narrative that civilization and knowledge evolved from Western countries is completely misleading, because if we all understand African history, we know that civilization started from Africa. Brilliant. That's a good one. And I think to an extent there are even some people from the host communities that are taking that on, and they are also, I mean, telling it. They are saying it that, well, we believe civilization started from Africa. So, and I think it should have been a good study if somebody look at, okay, civilization started from Africa, but what has happened over time? How, if civilization started from Africa, why is Africa underdeveloped today? Why is Africa not among the developed countries? And that will bring in maybe other things, that this and this are what has happened to Africa that pushed Africa into the status of a developing country despite all the resources, instead of being among the top developed countries. So I think that would be like a proper perspective at looking at African history. Okay, let's quickly take this before I will come right to read the welcome notes for Black History Month. That is from Korea. Like I said, it's quite a very interesting one. So, and I would like us to hear that. Thanks for joining us, Ogundeji Adedotun Abiodun, Tajuddin Sulaiman, Demi Abeke Adelawa. Thanks for joining in. Igwe Ibeto, thanks for joining in. I hope your program is going on well. Remember, Igwe Ibeto was here a few weeks ago to speak about his organization and what they are raising within the community. I hope it's going on well, Igwe. And I've got Ruth Omotola Onosanya. Thanks for joining this morning. Amos Akin Adejimi, thanks for joining in. And Balogun Shegun, thank you very much for joining in. Now, quickly picks about 2 comments and then I'll come to this. Welcome address by CREA, that's Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights. So, quick one. And the narrative that African culture is primitive is misleading because, let's see that. It's misleading. African culture is beautiful. It's enshrined in respect and communal love. Brilliant. African herbs and roots have major role of sources in medical studies and science, yet Western pharmaceutical business industries continually refuse to acknowledge it despite the fact that they work, they work collaboratively to produce medical revolutionary treatments. Which is brilliant. One other point that we now need to take on that, I think we've spoken about this before, and of course I also know that there are a bit of power play and suppressions which could happen, but then it would be that, because I know it's actually those herbs that are being used by all these Western pharmaceutical companies and co, without actually giving a good credit to the source of the source of their resources. So African is used as underdeveloped because we keep trying to use Western system to pilot our own robust system. We need African solution for African problem. I think that breaks the rank for me. We need African solution for African problems, and that's from Oli Roti. I'll quickly go through this because of our time. And this is from Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights. There's a Toni Morrison's quote, 1931 to 2019. This is from Toni Morrison. The function of freedom is to free someone else. I believe that many of us will agree with that. Like we used to say that to love, when you talk about love, is you actually loving someone else. So just like Tony says here, the function of freedom is to free someone else. Then I'll quickly take this. Welcome to Black History Month 2019. The first coordinated program for Black History Month in Scotland was launched in Glasgow in 2001. The motivation for this month came from the anti-racist movement. It was created to illuminate Scotland's hidden history and to cure it of its collective amnesia. As much as it is a celebration, it is an opportunity to bring into sharp relief the various strands of suffering, humiliation, exploitation, and denigration of African, Caribbean, and Asian people. Black History Month is also about solidarity and the buildings of allies in relation to shared and common experiences of racism in Scotland. The month of October is used to shine a spotlight on the history of Black people in this country. People who often have a direct link with Scotland through empire, slavery, colonialism, and migration. Although there are over 60 events happening in October, we recognize that 1 month a year is not adequate. Black history is Scotland's history. We continue to campaign for dedicated spaces to ensure this history is recognized authentically throughout the year and is embedded throughout our education system. We can't expect to resolve the racial inequalities persisting today without properly understanding the history which brought us to this point. To ensure there's something for everyone, events include cinema, exhibitions, radio shows, art, poetry, walking tours, debate, theater, science, and dance. There is also an opportunity to test your knowledge at the CREA Black History Quiz Night. Over the years, events are spread throughout Scotland, and this year's program includes Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, and Aberdeen. This year's Black History Month has once again provided the opportunity for CREA to work in collaboration with individuals, community groups, voluntary sector organizations, and public sector organizations. As always, these year programs would not be possible without the support of our friends, partners, funders, and we thank them all for their continued support. And that is from Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights. And they are based here in Glasgow, 8 John Street, that is Glasgow, G11JQ. The contact number is 0141 418 6530. And that is from Coalition for Racial Equality and Rights. I'm quickly going to mention one of the program. We are obviously running out of time. On Thursday, 3rd October, from 6:15 p.m. to 8 p.m. You might want to note this one in your diary. Thursday, the 3rd of October, from 6:15 to 8 p.m. at Kelvin Hall, 1445 Argyle Street, Glasgow. There's going to be a documentary screening and discussion of a piece titled After Sheku. For those of us that are here, we can well remember Sheku Bayo's story, which was a contact between him and the police, and in which he was unlawfully and extrajudicially murdered. It took quite a lot for people protesting to ask the states to open up a sort of an inquiry into the case itself. So, and then there would be a screening about him and further discussion, because the 9 officers that were involved, they were told that okay, let's say in 2018, the Crown Office decided that none of the 9 officers who attended that morning would face prosecution, and that decision is undergoing review at the moment. So it might be even as a support for that family, for people to attend the event, to know more about this, to know more about the case itself, and what has happened in the course of that contact with the police. And aside from them also, it becomes very, very useful for us also to know because if you know the way the police has acted, then it makes it easy for you to also be able to think ahead when you are having any sort of contact with the police, and also for organizations that are led by Africans to be able to advise people properly when they are dealing with the police, or they know that they will be dealing with the police, to put every necessary things in place to ensure that they stay alive. On that, we will be rounding up here for the next thing that will be taken over from me. That's a great event. I will make time to attend. That's beautiful, Oliroti, and we hope other people will attend as well. Please do not forget, our CREA phone number is 0141 418 6530. They've got lots of program going on, and you might as well want to get in contact with them. They are the one that arranges for the political shadowing scheme, where people from the ethnic minority will be put into the scheme to study Scotland politics and policies, so that we get more knowledge, and which also grant us access to participation. So thank you all for connecting this morning. I'll be right back here next Saturday. Remember, it's going to be 2 hours, so I'll be running the program from 10 to 12. Do enjoy the rest of the weekend, and this is all from us. Bye.